Library's poetry series. I'm your host, Elizabeth Lund. I'm a Newton poet and the host of Poetic Lines, which airs on New TV and Bronx TV and is available online. I am so happy to welcome you tonight because we have a fantastic lineup. And if you've been to these readings before, you know that we always have featured readings and then an open mic. If you are interested in being part of the open mic, there is a sign-up sheet on a table in the back. You can sign up during the brief intermission we will have after our featured readers. I am so thrilled to welcome Doug Holder and B.G. Thurston here tonight. Both poets have made huge contributions to the world of poetry, both in the local arena and far beyond. They have taught generations of students, helping them find their voices. They have promoted poetry in many ways, expanding the reach and the impact of the genre. And I have known both poets for many years and have been inspired by their work, their passion, and the way that they bring poetry to life and bring it off the page and into every part of daily life. You are in for a treat. I'm so excited. We're going to begin with Doug Holder. Doug, as you may know, is kind of a legend in the Boston area. He is a force of nature, and he has done so much to impact the literary scene. He is also the former host of the Newton Free Library Poetry Series. So it's a pleasure to welcome him back today as a poet. Doug is currently on the board of the New England Poetry Club after serving as co-president, and I can say he did that very well. Doug is a lecturer in creative writing at Endicott College and the arts editor of the Somerville Times. His poetry and prose have appeared in Rattle, Worcester Review, Lowell Review, Bay State Banner, the Boston Globe, and elsewhere. The Doug Holder Papers collection is housed at the University of Buffalo Libraries. His latest collection of poetry is I Ain't Gonna Wait for Godot No More from Wilderness House Press. Please help me welcome Doug Holder.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to be back at the Newton Free Library, although I don't enjoy driving at night from Somerville. But it was great doing it for 23 years. And, you know, 6 Degrees of Separation also, I've interviewed, Elizabeth has interviewed me on a TV show, and I interviewed her about her book, what was it?
Silence?
Yeah, and BJ, I've also, BG, I'm sorry. Oh, God. BG, I also interviewed you. So I have a cat. His name is Kletzmer. And what's unusual about my cat is that whenever I play, you know, I like to sit down and have a drink and listen to jazz, and that's my thing before dinner. And whenever jazz and, you know, 70s rock. And so I listen to, whenever I play The House of the Rising Sun by Bob Dylan, the cat jumps up on me, starts purring, lays in my lap. You know, it's just something that attracts him. So I was wondering about that. And so I wrote The House of the Rising Sun. Whenever my cat hears me play The House of the Rising Sun by Dylan, he jumps on my lap, rattling my whiskey, as if he senses something, some mysterious scent, a feline totem. He was once an abandoned feral cat. His father was a rambling man as he wags his tail, as if the music and words were a mantra, a dirge that brings him back to that winter, the starving fields of Kentucky, where he almost succumbed to his house of the rising sun, which has been the ruin of many a young cat, and thank God he wasn't one. I remember, being back in kindergarten. I don't remember preschool, but I remember kindergarten, and I didn't want to leave my mother. I just wanted to stay with her. I didn't want to go into kindergarten, and stuff like that. But I saw this kid in preschool with her mother, and started speculating about that. A child outside the preschool grabbed her mother's leg, face immersed in the tight tendon of this trunk. I don't want to go. Some way she senses her complacent float in her mother's sea, a well-cushioned dream of neither here or there. Why is life so unfair? And, I was talking to a lady, a friend of mine, and she said one of her friends said, talking about the dating scene, and she said, listen, mosquitoes are attracted to me, but I wouldn't date them, and so, so I wrote a poem, Mosquitoes Are Attracted to Me. There will come a time, closer than I think, when only mosquitoes will be attracted to me. Even the fleas will flee on a fragrant summer breeze, and the bees, well, they will do what they please. Perhaps I would like them better if there was some courtship, some more flirtation before they try to penetrate me. In any case, I will be discreet. I won't sleep with everything that is attracted to me. So there was this book, The Essential Doug Holder. I didn't. My publisher wanted to use that title. So if you like Doug Holder, this is essential. Okay. So when I worked at McLean Hospital for many years, I used to run poetry groups. I worked on back wards and like that, and I wrote a number of poems. Cigarette on the psychiatric ward. Can I have a light? What was that sudden spark in her eyes, that flame from cloudy dormant pupils when I lit her cigarette? The sudden driving ambition to inhale, the sunken chest's almost boastful expansion, the smoke filling the yawning cavity, a woman of substance until she exhaled. During the bus, I was in college during the busing crisis in the 70s, and I worked at Rexall's Drugs on the borderline of what was once known as the combat zone. So you had quite a clientele, prostitutes coming in and asking for milkshakes and fraps or whatever. And but anyway, I worked but I did also work on Rexall Drugs. So this is sort of a stream of consciousness poem. Working on Rexall Drugs on Boylston Street during the busing crisis, blushing when they asked me for condoms across the counter. The madman in the blue blazer, coat of arms, bulging eyes, shock of dyed blonde hair, rushing in and out of the store, looking perpetually shocked as if he was stuck, his hand in a socket. A long-distance flirtation with a cute 18-year-old girl at the soda fountain, the smile and the retreat, the seduction and the abandonment. Thought I was in a Thornton Wilder play. I heard the owner say, it's the rich Jewish liberals from the suburbs who are causing this crisis. And everything my Bronx shtetl pail of sediment, oh, how I love her Kishka's grandma, said about the goys were true. Well, the Catholic Church has a lot of money too, I said. Fired the next day. They said I was rude to a customer, a lesson in life. Let's see somewhere here. This is from my mother, who's dead, died some years ago. But we always had a sort of a strained relationship, But I was on near her, several years before her death, where I was on a train going back to New York City with her for the Thanksgiving, and I wrote about that. She said, "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold," for Rita Holder. I'm depressed, I'm old. I held her hand. Oh, don't, she said, it's cold. She said, maybe I pushed too much. Maybe I gave in much too soon. Perhaps it was something I needed to be told. I held her hand. "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold." I said, "But we love you. What was once bought has now been sold." I held her hand. "Oh, don't," she said, "it's cold." She said, "What should I have seen? What was I meant to be? What would have pleasured me?" I held her hand. "Too bad," she said, "it's warm now, but oh so cold, but oh so old." Her hand gently broke from me, and like spotted moths fluttered free. Remember Filene's Basement? Yeah, in downtown Boston. Filene's Basement. And the doors could barely contain them, the thoroughbred ladies ready to race at the stroke of the clock's hand for discount linen and lace. And I was swept in by an animated, cackling feminine wave, soon eyeing the salesman, eyeing me, and I was transformed, polished into a well-heeled businessman in a double-breasted suit, and the clerk cracked by my side, "Hey, kid, ain't she a beaut?" And I fingered the starch color of multicolored arrow shirts, and I admired the crusty, ancient saleswoman who still had the desire and energy to flirt. And where else can you drape your wounds with a funky fedora or the balm of a soft, slightly irregular Brooks Brothers shirt? It was a place to go when you were happy or desperately hurt. You know, I used to watch Fathers Knows Best, and it's sort of like sickening when I think about it. But you know, so I wrote a poem about Father Knows Best, Mother Does the Rest. The bland tyranny of the cardigan sweater, his smile creased in brutal condescension. Mother corseted in apron strings. Bud, with a grease's black defiant lock, rushes to the freedom of the front door. Father calls, "Princess," and she arrives dancing with the dog with an anxious, scripted, girlish giggle. And don't you think they would like to kill him just a little? Let's see. And this, you know, you have a few drinks. Sometimes you think you're the life of the party, but you're really not. So here it is, the life of the party. Even the sparkling wine seemed to wink it seductively at you. After all, you were the center. The words fell like pearls from your mouth, the approving smiles from the women, the perfect opiate. Delightful, but never enough. And for this moment, you were a man among the men. Above, out of reach from the subtext of the threats, you weave through the crowd like some predatory cat. And then, in the bathroom mirror, who was this imposter, short and bald, struggling with his fly, his eyes red-rimmed and bulging, staring at you in a comic assault with your pants down? You now remembered your place. And this, you know, this was a while ago. I was, they're grown now, but when my nephew was a baby, and we went into the Charles Hotel, and my sister-in-law started breastfeeding him, which was, you know, right in the middle of that, and I was sort of shocked by that. It wasn't as commonplace as it is now. But so I said, "Private dining under a blouse." In the middle of our conversation and the din of the large dining room, she lifted her blouse, her baby blindly grabbing her nipple with his mouth. The blouse covered him like a shroud for private dining. I saw the infant emerge, sleeping, held in an untroubled dream. I sucked on my straw, flattening the plastic stem, still awake and troubled. And when I was a kid, we used to go from Long Island to my grandmother's place in the Bronx, and it was sort of like a strange world for me, you know, coming from suburbia to the old world of the Bronx. So this is called Wallace Avenue, Bronx, 1965. Rows of ancient Jewish mothers, like angry crustaceans perched on lawn chairs, claws out, pinch at the peach fuzz of my flushed cheeks. I kissed the skin above their leathery turkey necks and listened to their code of Yiddish. Their generous breasts withered by their offspring, who, weaned on shtetl milk, now long beyond the pale, leave their mothers to dry in the summer sun. And I'll read a few poems from my recent collection. I ain't gonna wait for Godot no more, because I like Bob Dylan and I love Samuel Beckett, so, and I think some similarities. But I was having a discussion with Lloyd Schwartz, who, by the way, is going to be honored at the Suffolk University Poetry Center this Thursday from 5 to 6, if you're free. But I was having a conversation with Lloyd Schwartz, and he was telling me about the cemeteries in Queens, or in Queens, those big cemetery, I don't know what it's called. But there were the people who were in Yiddish theater had very colorful tombs, like they were, like they were a marquee or something like that, with all kinds of, Yiddish craziness and showbiz stuff on their tombs. So Hamlet so I imagine Hamlet, the Yiddish theater was very interactive. People would say, Hamlet, get a job. People would interact in Yiddish theater. So Hamlet at the Yiddish theater. Sometimes they just want to yell at him, this poor man's Laurence Olivier. Get a job through his thick existential fog. Such surus, enough already, as his dramatic angst. You think you had it hard, to be or not to be. If that is the question, they make a decision, they say with derision. A father might have yelled, as mine did to me, you'll be a drifter, a luftmensch. Well, at least I'd be free. Some mother might have espoused a maternal cliche. You are 30 years old, you have your whole life ahead of you. And this Yiddish Hamlet might retort, and that's the problem. My whole life is ahead of me. When it is all over, then the fat lady sings and sings. I almost died from COVID. I was an idiot. I didn't, I viewed myself as being, invincible. I was, in my late 60s, and I didn't get the what do you call it, Plaxivlic or whatever it is. I just sort of said, I'm going to tough it out, and I really went into sort of a weird space, was delusional and all this stuff. So I wrote a poem, it's called Elegant and Eternal. On my COVID night, trembling like a drunk, on detox, my shirt soaked in sweat, clung to me like a skin to keep me intact. It was then he came to me, a snake oil salesman, a man appointed in plaid and polyester, with a wide, hateful smile, giving me his fever dream, his crazy Eddie sales pitch. Elegant and eternal, elegant and eternal. What was he selling? A casket, an urn, or perhaps a bill of goods straight to the inferno? This is my father was a madman in New York City, of that era, and he used to be with all these personalities and celebrities, and I have a picture on my wall of him with Jack Dempsey, the famous prize fighter. So my father with Jack Dempsey. On my table is a picture of my father with Jack Dempsey outside the Brill Building in New York City. Dad's narrow black tie, his jet black hair tamed by an oil slick of Vitalis, his left hand clenched in a fist, a pugilist meeting another pugilist. Dempsey pretends to yell something in my dad's ear, like Ali to Cosell, a graceful athlete, to the Jewish Ed Sullivan posture of my PR man father. My father didn't seem to be living in the moment. He was always not here and nowhere. Now he is frozen in a frame. I will never understand him, and he didn't understand me. Now we just stare at each other, wordless, desperate to connect. Let's see. Maybe we read one or two more. That's it. One thing I wanted to know, where does this dust come from? It seems I just dusted yesterday, and the dust is back again. Am I right? And so I wrote this poem called House Dust. At night I shed my dead skin cells. In the morning, in the mirror, I say a Kaddish for their dust. Dust floats in my home, bombs of pollen on the promise of a fragrant spring air. I try to sweep it all under the tatters of a Persian rug, but it spindles around an old forlorn chair, always looking for a grave. At times I see a shaft of afternoon light, the dust, a funnel, a falling detritus, streaming to the heavens. God's hands are full of dust. And one more. My computer wants to verify if I'm human. You know, we always have, are you human? And what the hell am I if I'm not human? This is what my computer tells me. Is this an insult or rhetoric that it spews? An ontological question coming from some fuse? Sometimes during my dark night of the soul, I wonder if I'm embodied or an eternal, ethereal ghost. But the morning light screams in my faith from the bedroom window yet again. The computer has a nefarious rotating circle that surrounds my visual plane. I check my posts. I feel the flesh and blood, the flashing synapses of my brain, the crooked lifelines that are traced on my hands. The circle stops in the maddening cycle. The cold metal and steel pulsates with judgment and gives me redemption after many years I have prayed. I have been saved. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Doug.
Thank you.
Before you started reading, I told the audience that you were something of a Boston legend, and that reading illustrates why. Your work is so honest and courageous, and I love the way you take us into places that most of us would never go normally. You say things that many of us would never say, but think. And when you lead us into some gritty places, you always do so with compassion and an incredible amount of humor. And that balance of humor and compassion is what makes the work so strong. Thank you.
You're just saying that.
No, but I was especially happy to hear you read that poem about your cat, because Doug and I are both on the board of directors of the New England Poetry Club. And so every month there is a meeting on Zoom. And so every time I'm looking at everyone's screens, I see Doug, and he's got this wonderful bookcases behind him, just brimming with books. And every now and then, I will see this tail kind of go across the screen, and Doug kind of pushes it away, and then the tail comes back, because the tail wants to be part of that experience.
He's an unofficial member of the board.
Yeah. He is, yes, on that poem. So thank you again.
Okay. Thank you.
That wonderful, wonderful
Thank
reading.
you very much.
And now I'm happy to introduce B.G. Thurston, another wonderful writer. I have known B.G. for many years. She is a fantastic teacher and encourager. And when she describes her poetry, she always says that it balances on the knife edge between despair and hope. But I don't see it that way. I think her work balances between realism and hope, and always comes down on the side of a realistic, hard-earned hope. And that, combined with her wonderful language, is just a pleasure. So let me tell you a little bit about B.G. She lives on a sheep farm in Warwick, Massachusetts. She received her MFA in poetry from Vermont College in 2002. She has taught poetry courses at LaSalle Village, online for Vermont College, and she conducts poetry workshops. She's wonderful if you ever have a chance to take one of her workshops. Her third book of poetry, The Many Lives of Cat House Farm, Tales of a Rural Brothel, was published in 2025 by Chervana Barber Press, and it's the culmination of a decade of historical research about her farmhouse, which was built in the 1770s. Please help me welcome B.G. Thurston.
That was great, Doug. I loved hearing your poetry. I want to thank Elizabeth Lund and the Newton Library for hosting this reading. I'm so happy to see some of the people that I know and love from LaSalle Village, and Z, who I've known for, 30 years or more, from our border days. And I'm happy to finally have this book out. It was 10 years of research and writing, and then COVID hit, so it took a while to get it published. It's in 5 sections. It went through a lot of different incarnations, but the 5 sections, and I'll try to tell you a little bit about each section. The first section is about when I found the farm coming home from a residency in 2000. And I saw it for sale. I thought it was bucolic. It was what I always wanted. Came home, told my husband, oh, we need to get this farm. Every time I called, it was sold. And every time I would go buy it again, the for sale sign was back up. And it turned out the well was contaminated and had to be, no one would give him, the people, a loan. So the first poem is called Destination, and it's in 2 voices. You must go find the key for your farmhouse. Where is it? Hidden at the back of the black mailbox. What should I take? Clean water in a cut glass jar and a sense of trespass. What will I do there? Feast on the letters of the dead. Will anyone know me? You will be known only by your house's name. How do I get to this place? Find the collapsed barn where 4 roads meet. Whom will I see? An old farmer holding a bloody head by its horn. What should I ask him? Don't speak. Turn left at the corner. Proceed until the dirt lane ends. How will I know for sure? You won't. And that was our introduction, or my husband's introduction, because this farmer had just butchered a steer and was walking across the road to, I guess, feed the head to his pigs, which still grosses me out to this day. But that's farm life, so. This poem is called The Ghost. I have not left the world. It was poetry who abandoned me, or so I believed. Now when I hold my hands over my ears, I see the echo from the sparrow's throat. And when I close my eyes tight, I smell the color of blood and rust. Holding my palm over my heart, I feel nothing as words continue falling all around my feet. And the last poem in that section is called Lineage. Seeking the genealogy of this house and land is like piecing a spirit quilt together. The same names repeat every generation: Caleb, Sarah, Richard, Hannah, William, and Mary. Their children appear and disappear suddenly. Lung fever, croup, born still, oftentimes taking their mother with them into the grave. Reading elegant script belies the somber tone of each recorded event. Bewildered, I stand under the evening sky and question what I have in common with the women who have lived on this acreage. I lift my head when I hear them whisper in a sky bright with stars, the unchanging patterns all of us share. The second section is about the 4 generations of the Weeks family who lived there from 1770 to 1870 about. 2 brothers, William and Samuel Weeks, built the house. but they did not move in. They enlisted in the Revolutionary War. Their brother Richard moved in with his wife Judith, and they had 7 children. When Richard died, Caleb, their son, inherited the farm. And the very first factual piece of evidence I found about the farm was Sarah Weeks' letter to the probate judge asking to retain some of the items that were hers when they sold off everything at auction when Caleb died. This poem is for Sarah Weeks. What remains? I have labored long for all these years on this forlorn farm, birthed and buried our babies once within the same week. Caleb was a husband as good as he could manage. Summers he chopped wood and plowed furrows deeper into his brow. I kept my part of our bargain, but in the end have little to show. And now Caleb lies in the same ground that grew mostly stones. Intestate, in the end he had no will. Now I pray and plead with the Lord and the court, petition a probate judge to allow me to keep what was mine. My bed, a bureau, my Bible, and my rocking chair. One table, a chest, and a single light stand. The rest all gone, sold off to pay the debt that grew each season when the crops died or the cow dried up. Caleb had his bottle, and I my psalms and prayers. Alone, rocking, I remember my Caleb pulling me close, his ragged breath, his rough palms, burrowing under the worn quilt of night. And the weeks when Caleb died, their son Richard, who was named after his grandfather, inherited the farm. I don't think he had an easy time of it. They lost their 3 sons from different pandemics that were going around the area. And if you didn't have your sons, your daughters all would marry and leave with other farmers. So you really needed your sons to continue if you were going to make it on a farm. So the last paternal owner was Richard Weeks, and this is called Richard Weeks' Lament. In the year before last, I still wanted to believe our troubles would vanish, but a stubborn evil persists and plants itself inside every crevice and crack of this faltering landscape, where planks from the fallen barn litter the fallow fields. All my heart tells me is to take up my family and leave this forlorn place, the house where I was born, our footsteps on the cart path, now erased by snow, gone, all the ways we were held here, our places around the long table in the gathering room sit empty. We do not know where we will go. Our prayers will light our way. God, save our souls. And it turned out that they actually didn't go far. They moved in with the farm across the street because I found them living with the Whipples on the 1865 census. But the parents died soon thereafter, and she did have one more son, but he was orphaned at 5 years old. So between the time when the farm fell out of the Weeks' possession, it went through 11 different owners. And then we came into, between the Civil War, we came into Prohibition and the Great Depression. And at that point, the house was filled with a lot of people who played cards and drank, and they had a speakeasy going. So finally, George Rivers bought the house and set it up as a speakeasy and later as a brothel. He also bought the neighboring house right over the New Hampshire line. And when the authorities would come to shut him down from Massachusetts, he'd move everybody to New Hampshire And when they'd come vice versa from New Hampshire, he'd move all the ladies back into our house. So eventually they caught on and they both went at the same time and did arrest him. So this is the third section. Speakeasy, 1935. They come as darkness falls, eager footsteps with furtive glances up and down the road. Whatever circumstances may have drawn them to our door, we welcome each one inside. In this place, truth and lies often wear the same disguise. Secrets remain safe with us. Nothing they say here leaves, though later we will whisper whatever sorrows they share. They toast with amber courage, then follow us into dim rooms where kerosene lamps flicker. Some hold us a little too tight, but most just want the comfort of any woman's warm bosom. When their breath gets heavy, we listen for the mantel clock, counting each half-hour chime. They will rise again and leave before morning's naked eye shines down on us once more. And some of the poems in this section, I kind of had the hardest time writing and putting myself in those situations, but who knows where you'd be during the Great Depression. So this poem is called Once Upon a Time. When I was small, Papa gave me a china doll in a blue silk dress. I'd brush her blonde hair each night while Mama read me fairy tales. Now, I spend early evenings waiting for a different bedtime and listen to the stories men tell themselves when they reach for me in the dark. I watch them put on their other lives, return to their wives and daughters. But I wonder if they think of me when they work in fields or factories. Afternoons, I walk into the woods as birds compose their love songs. I look for lady slippers and trillium, a bit of beauty I can keep in a jar that I'll place next to the headboard on an old trunk from home. My hope chest, where a doll with golden hair waits, her glassy eyes shut tight. And when you think, when I go upstairs, it's hard to envision what was going on there. But I did hear some stories about people who, if you have a business that's based on illicit sex and liquor, what could go wrong, right? So some of the people would have crushes on townspeople. Some of them actually married townspeople and farmers nearby. And their families still are there today. But so I was thinking about that. And this poem is called The Renaming of Absence. You play your mournful music. I know what you want, the moon and stars, but I am fresh out of constellations. Floating through this black space, I can no longer take a breath. A familiar heat pulls me down. Loving you always burns me. The want takes hold before my senses can kick in, leaving some part of me sore for days, remembering and raw. I hear the piano fingering desire through the distance between us. But I know these scars by heart. I've heard this all before. Now the clarinet howls, bang at the moon's tired face. Look up, count the stars. I am no longer there. So then we go into the fourth section, which is about the restoration. When we moved in, I guess squirrels had been living in the house not too long before we owned it. So we had to do a lot of work to make it inhabitable. And we like to say that we healed the house and the house healed us. So this poem is called Spring Forward. For months, the old horse stood at the back gate staring into eternity. This winter stole light from my eyes, pried life from my hands, too weak to hold the breath, leaving the beings I love. I have prayed with words no one understands. Loss is a language all its own. Maybe prayers are the sap that seeps from the maples, sweet rivulets collected in tin buckets with tinted lids. Or the crocuses I planted last fall by the picket fence. Even now, when I cannot follow a straight line of thought in my scrambled brain, words still scatter onto paper to wait for light. And the last section is just basically about our life, and in the house we did put on an addition right before COVID, which is probably why we didn't kill each other during COVID, because it's larger now than it was when it was just a little cape. But the Ukraine war started up when I was finishing writing the poems for this, and I started thinking about all of the ways home affects us. So this poem is called Epiphany, and the epigraph is by James Joyce. The soul of the commonest object seems to us radiant. Coffee poured into blue speckled mugs, birds perch outside the kitchen window, the steady procession of black-capped chickadees darting to the suet feeder, while a queue of nuthatches and titmice line up in the lilac's brown branches. Then comes the red squirrel's antics, cheeks chock full of sunflower seeds as he tightropes across the porch rail. Outwitting the young dog once again, such bravado should be applauded for its daily show of fearless finesse. Notice the forgotten flag that salutes the slightest breeze, its stripes forever rippling colors of blood and freedom. Today, think about all the women who will walk out of doors to flee from war, leaving their homes far behind them. And also in the last section, I have some poems dealing with dogs and chickens. And I thought I would read a chicken poem to lighten it up. Ruling the Roost. Rudy enters, comb erect, red-headed and ready, sidestepping with his black feathered feet, tail plumage held high, gleaming like an oil slick. The young pullets, all smitten, fall under his spell. The hens, old livers, resist his cocksure advantage, knowing a rooster is not needed to lay fresh eggs. But Rudy's undaunted and patrols the perimeter, his speckled chest puffed, fluffing his ruffled red collar. He approaches each grand dame with a majestic sweep of one scarlet wing held out like a matador's cape. Though the old hens appear unimpressed, one by one he woos them away from their maidenly habits. Now Rudy boasts all day, horny, henpecked, happy. And do more. And that's not the poem. Winter storm. In the first snow, we walk down the unplowed road. Both dogs unleashed run in zigzags ahead, bear bells jangling on collars. After a mile or longer, we reach the red slashes that tell us to turn back before time runs out as dusk drifts down. We listen for gunshots, black powder discharge that peppers the silence. The deer have hidden deep in stands of pine and fir. The way home seems short, but the final incline's climb is tough on creaking knees. The dogs have disappeared over the rise to sit and wait next to the dark green door. Inside is a wood stove, hot tea in glazed mugs, apple cake, and the evening news to bicker over until bed. Yet when I lie counting both sheep and blessings, the familiar prayer I'll add is to ask for one more day, just the same as this one. And the last poem, but I do want to say one thing before that. I gave out, and if you want one, I have more. I have pictures of, on a greeting card, that in, I think it was 2017, I was just opening mail, and I got this card, and I threw it. It was from a financial advisor I'd never met in California. I threw it on the pile, and I was going to pick up the pile to recycle it, and I realized that looks like our house, and it was our house. So Tim called this financial advisor, and he said, "How did you get a picture of our house?" And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." So it turned out that someone had taken a picture of our house, and it's very similar to the picture Tim took of the house. It's just when we replaced the fence. And he picked it from 4 different ones the secretary had shown him, and so he mailed it out to us, and that was our house. So I called up the greeting card company in Minneapolis, or Minnesota, and I said, "Where did you get a picture of our house?" And they told me a photographer had taken it and sold it to them. And so I ordered copies of it. And so I give it out with the book just because it's all the weird things that happen now that I live in this house. It's very coincidental. So the last poem of the book, and I thought I would let the house have its own say. The house speaks. 2 centuries I have stood as the land changed around me. Trees towered, disappeared, as forest became pasture, and then forest once more. I remember strong men who nailed posts and beams, singing the hymns of beginning. Clapboards dressed me then, and windows of single panes. So many coats of paint peeling, scraped, then wooden shingles, green, then red, then green again. Electric wires entered my walls, iron pipes snaked into my cellar. Most can no longer hear the voices, but I hear their echoes, the laughter, the sorrows, and sometimes anger. All the souls who have lived here have left the imprint of their spirits. As time settles my frame, timbers creak a steady lullaby to summon the ghosts each night, who keep watch in constant vigil to protect and turn away any threat or harm. All I ask is for you to never leave me empty. Fill me with flowers and music. Keep a lantern burning in the window, a beacon of light that will welcome you back home. Thank you.
Another fantastic reading. Thank you so much. I love the way you give voice to people who would otherwise have been forgotten by history. And you not only tell their stories and capture their struggles, but you illustrate so beautifully their strength and the importance of perseverance. You also have a wonderful way of weaving together the threads that connect people and times, and you are the light that speaks in that last poem, where the house is saying, "Fill me with flowers, fill me with love, don't let me be forgotten." The house can say that because you were there, and you put everything into your wonderful poetry. And as you said, the house helped you heal, but you also helped the house heal. And you remind us of the power and beauty and presence of poetry that we all need so much. Thank you, BG. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Melissa.
mic so that if people want to sign up for the open mic, you can do so. I believe the sheet is on the back table. And then after the open mic, we'll have time to chat with Doug and BG. And if you want to buy copies of their books, there are books for sale. So we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes.